Hey everyone, welcome back to the range. My name is Matt, also known as the King of Armor Destruction, the Armor Wizard. Zap, zap. We have a body armor demo today. That's why you're here. In full transparency, these Highcom 4S17Ms were donated by John over at Apex Armor Solutions with no strings attached. We tested Highcom plates a long time ago when Andrew over the chopping block started testing some body armor, but we were never able to get into the hard armor section. So a big thank you to John and you all for being able to test these. These are a 10 by 12 model. They weigh 7 pounds, 3.2 ounces, or 3.27 kilograms for those across the pond. They are approximately 995 thousandths thick, or for those across the pond, 25.27 millimeters. These are a 10 by 12 model. They are multi-curve. You can see all those nice, sexy curves right there, and there is our label on the back. These are NIJ certified. We have the little Starburst logo here, and essentially what that means is that Highcom has done a bunch of checks and balances and quality assurance and logistics for all the raw material and assembly, so that serial number 1 is exactly the same as serial number 10,000 on these plates, meaning all the raw materials and the weights are the same and all the threat profiles are the same, although this is level 4. So we only have to stop 1 round of M2 armor piercing. Now, if this is the first time you've come across my channel, I do things completely different than a majority of all other YouTubers when it comes to demoing or testing body armor. I want you guys to take as much information away from these tests as possible so you can build confidence in these plates that you're looking at buying. Since this is rifle armor, we shoot at 45 feet. We also shoot at 0 degrees because that represents worst case scenario. Any of these oblique angle shots or shots where the plate's placed like this and then you shoot like this only increases the amount of material that the bullet has to penetrate through and could give you false performance expectations. We also use a chronograph whenever possible, a Pro Chrono Pal Digital DLX, because we need to know the velocity of that bullet. Since this employs a ceramic strike face per the NIJ, we've gone ahead and dropped each plate on its face as a preconditioning test. Plate number 1 has only been dropped 2 times. That is the official NIJ drop test protocol. The second plate, however, per John's request, has been dropped 10 times. That's a lot to watch. We'll speed that up so you can watch that. But we're just trying to prove that any cracking that could occur with these plates does not degrade its performance. Now, what I've gone ahead and done is I mark a DT on the plate to indicate that it's been dropped. This is the one that's been dropped 10 times. And then I do a torque test. That's where I grab the opposing sides of the plate and I apply pressure to them to listen for any cracks. Generally speaking, silicon carbide and boron carbide that is not laminated tends to be more prone to that cracking. I do believe this is an alumina oxide plate based on the weight, and we generally don't see cracking. So if we don't hear any cracking, we mark it with a TQ and a check mark. And this plate that has been dropped 10 times, I did not hear any cracking. We also use a giant clay briefcase filled with Roma Plastilina #1 clay. Looking for sponsors currently. This acts as our compressible media to put the clay up against, and it weighs 80 pounds, so it's somewhat of an immovable object. Now, you have to heat the clay up to around 100 degrees and keep that temperature, and then you drop a ball on it, a 22mm stainless steel ball, to certify the dent. And I can't do that out here, or at least not with the time that I'm given, so we're just looking at a general representation of what back face could be. If you see something like 60mm in my clay at 80 degrees Fahrenheit, in official NIJ testing, you're allowed 44mm. That could be failing. We also put a spreadsheet here at the beginning that we kind of foreshadow all the threats that we're going to shoot at it, and we had that spreadsheet in the end in a summary review where we put the velocities and the penetrations and any notes for any special shots that we made during the testing. And we also do a tear down, and this helps us confirm any penetrations that weren't obvious during shooting, or if the manufacturer claims that the plate had edged ceramic, we can actually confirm that the ceramic extends all the way to the outer perimeter of this plate. And from what I can tell, Highcom's 4S117M does have full edge to edge. I do want to remind everyone that I am not an NIJ lab, So if you see me stop a threat over here or a threat penetrates, you should always defer to the manufacturer for actual accredited lab results. Sometimes over here I do make mistakes and I shoot M2AP at 2932 feet per second, and the manufacturer rated their plate at 2900 feet per second max velocity for that projectile, and I have a penetration. You shouldn't take that away from the plate as a bad thing. Again, I'm always after worst case scenario. And on the flip side, if you're the manufacturer and you see me stop M993 out of a 13-inch barrel against your plate, you should send that off to an accredited lab and have that added as a special threat to your panel. We're strapped up and we're ready to take our first shot. I think with how I've been doing some of our recent tests, I think for level 4 this is a pretty good protocol. We're going to take 2 shots of M2AP kind of in opposing corners to kind of see what the back face could be like. It seems in our multi-curve designs, this upper breast area on the plate seems to be a weak spot for this particular threat. This is our M2 armor piercing 163 grain full metal jacket with a steel penetrating core, very long and hard. The velocity spec is 2880 feet per second. You're allowed plus or minus 30. Generally, I've been about plus 70 with these loads. I should dial them back a little bit. We've got a 24-inch TC compass and 300 Winchester Magnum with a Phantom M2 up front to make the golfers happy, and a primary arms 4-16 scope up top. We're in a Boyd's stock. So this one is going to be in that upper right part of the plate. .2942, so we were 2910, 32 feet per second over spec. And then this one will be in the lower corner. This one's pretty easy to tell. Shots number 1 and 2. Number 1 and number 2. Now this is interesting. I don't see a drop face foam on here. I see this plastic honeycomb-like material. Very interesting. We are using alumina oxide. That's our white ceramic. More budget friendly, but known for stopping some pretty good threats depending on its thickness. Place those bets in the comments below. Uh-oh, Raggy. We had a penetration down here into my brand new clay. That's not good, folks. Not good at all. But our first shot, that back face, nothing to write home about too serious-wise. This clay has been heating up all day. That penetration down there, though. Now, as far as our back face goes, let's get right in there. Right around 23 millimeters. And then our core is probably somewhere in there. Based on that M2AP performance on that second hit, I'm not sure how these are going to go, but for me, usually most plates will stop these rounds unless they're on the lighter end of the spectrum. I've got Mr. Flashy Flash, our M14A1 API. That's 150 grains with a hardened penetrating core and lots of armor piercing, or lots of incendiary compound. Then I have the M80A1, that is the U.S. Army's current issue ball round in 7.62 NATO, but I've got it loaded in our 300 Wind Chad. We'll take that shot second, and Mr. Flashy Flash first. .3496. That's smoking hot.
So much fire, so satisfying.
Here was the M80A1 plus B plus, and here was the M14A1 API. Place those bets in the comments below. No pass through, folks. Now, the API, quite the dimple down there, if I had to say. As far as our back face goes, this bottom shot of the API looks to be about the worst. And because it was already pressed into the clay, I mean, you're looking at maybe 8 millimeters at the most. What's interesting about our 4S17M is the lack of back face that we're seeing on our plate. Normally with our M2AP threats, depending on the quality of the plate, we're seeing a larger dimple here. This dimple is representative, can't say that word, of what we see with 5.56 threats with some plates. So that's pretty darn amazing. Not sure how that M2AP from that second shot squeaked through there, but for an alumina plate, fairly impressive. We'll tear these guys down at the end and see what makes them tick. All right, on to plate number 2. This is the plate that has been drop tested 10 times on its face. After checking out plate number 1 and seeing what they're using for a drop face protectant, that honeycomb, that's very interesting. It seems to retain its shape, so I don't know how that's going to affect preventing the ceramic from cracking or not. But again, when we did the torque test, we didn't hear any cracking. So at John's request, we're going to shoot plate number 2 with a whole bunch of 5.56. Hopefully we can get more than what I have dots on our plate, but maybe not. This is M855A1 62 grain enhanced performance round. This is the evolution of M855. It has a copper core and a large hardened arrowhead steel tip. We've got a 22-inch TC compass with a turbo 5.56 on here, so this is maximum real world velocity without going to a 24-inch barrel, which I haven't been able to find too many that have a 5.56 chamber, at least in a bolt gun. Wouldn't mind an AR. Just smoked a strap. Okay. Uh-oh, Raggy, we lost the plate. All right. Lots of carnage on this plate. Here's our honeycomb drop face protectant. Looks like it has some kind of adhesive on it. It's pink purplish in color. All these shots should be fair hits. It was number 1, 2. We skipped this one, 3, 4, 5. That one walked a little bit. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. I think I might be short 2 on the chronograph from reading down there. Place those bets in the comments below, although if you saw the C-roll camera, you would have guessed. Uh-oh, Raggy. Out of all of that, those 15 shots, we had 2 penetrations, here and here. Very interesting that this area is where the M2AP penetrated on the last plate, but otherwise, very impressive. Now for the teardown, fan favorite. This one is rather interesting because of some different materials that we see that are making up this Highcom 4S117M. Here is our back cover, typical nylon cover. I must say, you know, in my professional opinion, I like a covering like this because it tends to fit the plate very tightly, and when it fits it tightly, it prevents internal components from shifting if there is a hit. It took a great deal of peeling to get it off, so that's a good thing. Here is our backer. This looks very much like the backing material that RMA uses on the 1155. It's more of like that E-glass, like it's almost like fiberglass versus polyethylene. It is pressed. You can see how rigid that is. I cannot thumb through that like a book. I apologize if the camera is not focusing. This is my brand new iPhone 14 Pro, and it seems to be not cooperating with me. Again, the only penetration on plate number 1 was that second shot of M2AP, which is very interesting because if we come over to plate number 2, the only penetrations were shots 12 and 13 of M855A1, which is in the same area. So after that, here is our strike face. It appears it's laminated a little bit in some way, at least on the front side. We have this black covering here. Maybe it's kind of looks like more of that e-glass here. Our strike face is alumina. I measured that right around 403 thousandths. That laminating layer did a pretty good job of keeping it intact, although with the HESCO plates and some of the other laminated strike faces, I think that different type of material with a lot more adhesive seems to do better. Now here's the interesting part. This is our drop face protectant. It is like a honeycomb. It's corrugated plastic. It doesn't really have a lot of give to it, but it did the job. I measured that right around 240 thousandths thick. And, you know, we dropped plate number 2 10 times on its face, and it held 13 out of 15 M855A1s going as fast as possible, at least to my ability with what I have here on hand. So rather impressive. I would be very interested in testing Highcom's higher end offerings to see maybe if they have something rated for like XSAPI, you know, M993, or any of our advanced AP threats. Well, folks, if anything, I thought the drop face protectant material on our Highcom 4S117M is very interesting. I actually have a set of level 3 pure polyethylene plates that employ a similar technology made out of aluminum for the blunt force trauma. We got to test those at some point in the future. One of my followers actually sent us a pair that he recovered from over abroad, and he sent them to us to destroy. As far as the performance of our Highcom plate goes, I think it did rather well. It is a budget-oriented alumina plate, and the laminating that they're doing on it, with at least on the front side, seemed to keep as much of the ceramic together as possible. Now, we did stop one round of M2AP, but that bottom corner, for whatever reason, let one through. The velocity was above the max allowance specification, but on the same area on the second plate, 2 of the rounds of M855A1 that did penetrate were in that same area. Could be something to look at if you were Highcom, just as a suggestion. We also dropped that second plate 10 times on its face, so whatever that little cool plastic honeycomb is doing its job along with the laminating, because we didn't hear any cracks, and we stopped 13 rounds of 5.56 without an issue. As far as any back face goes, they are using what appears to be like that e-glass type material versus a ultra high molecular weight polyethylene, and we didn't see really any concerns with our back face on this plate. With all that being said, it's time for me to get the heck out of here. I've got a cut, my hands are dirty, and I'm getting hungry, so it's time to close up shop. But at the end of all my videos, I take a moment to thank all those who help make these possible, because there's a lot that goes into them. Mainly the cost of ammunition and supplies like straps or clay, or even procuring armor at times. That gets very expensive. So number 1 is my Patreon and Subscribe Star fans. I have a link tree in the description below, just like various other content creators. There's discount codes in there, links to some of my armor and velocity spreadsheets, or different ways to contact me or support me through Instagram or Facebook. You know, the biggest thing for me is, you know, everybody says this, but subscribing to me helps me out. A lot of times when I contact some of these vendors or retailers, and, you know, they only see that I have, you know, 60,000 subscribers. They're like, who are you? Go away, brush you under the rug. In retrospect, I've been around for a long time, and I think more and more people are starting to look for this kind of data when it comes to procuring body armor, because you want to have confidence in those plates that you're going to buy. Number 2 is my buddy John's son over at Apex Armor Solutions, who, in full transparency, sent us those Highcom plates to destroy with no strings attached. And of course, number 3 is you all for watching. Until next time, I'll catch you at the range.